Hi, everybody. Welcome to Pilu, episode 9. I am Louise Farr from Your Healing Journey.
Hello, everybody, and I am Paleki from Spiritual Medium Paleki.
Hi, P.
Hello, Lou. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So we're both trying today with you've got your microphone and I have mine hooked up, so we're hoping the audio is a little different. We're trying every week, guys, to experiment to see until we get that magic, perfect light, perfect sound, perfect everything. So we'll see.
Well, you know what, P? What they say, life is not really perfect.
It's true. It's true, but we'll be perfect.
That'll be our intention.
Right? There you go. We'll set it out. Stress ourselves out over the podcast.
Yeah, intention to be perfect.
There you go. And so how was your week, Miss Ma'am?
My week was good. It went by fast. My goodness. It just flew by. Here we are on Sunday already, recording our 9th podcast.
That's true.
Which is exciting.
Yeah, getting there almost at the big 1-0.
Yeah. Oh, yes, double digits. Oh, that'll be exciting. So no, it was a good week. I had a good report from the ophthalmologist. I've been having issues with my eyes. And
So 2021's off to a good start.
It's off to a good start. And I'm just going to wish my mom a happy birthday. Mom's at home beyond the veils. It would have been her 82nd birthday today.
Yes. So well, happy birthday to you. Mwah.
Yes.
Yes. She'll hear that in heaven. So I think that's lovely.
Yes, of course.
Now we are going to talk about creativity today. We were discussing, but I did want to, we were chatting a little bit. Lou and I always chat before we actually start recording the podcast. And we were talking, and I was saying yesterday how I went to Superstore, and it was very frantic, and I kept dropping stuff and breaking things, which I normally never do. That very sort of unbalanced energy. And I was just thinking about it too. People are that panic is happening again. That we're going back into red, and again that collective fear and everything. And I always tell people, like, it's interesting for me where I work from home a lot of the time. I don't interact with big groups of people all the time unless it's talks or whatever if I'm doing them. So it's always interesting when I go out in that energy, and I'm realizing again, it's almost like that second wave, not of just the coronavirus, but also that fear that's going along with it. So I do want to take this opportunity to remind people that just because there's fear and disruption patterns going on around you, you don't actively need to participate in them if you don't want to. But just as an extra sort of reminder, because I wasn't thinking of it when I went to the grocery store yesterday, because like I said, I don't normally go when it's super busy like that, or just conscious reminder, put bubbles around yourself for the next little bit, so you're not going into that energy. Make sure you do cleanse your energy if you have been to a big space like that, because you are picking up a lot. Because I notice a lot of people sort of tend to share that collective fear with each other.
Yes.
And you and I have discussed that many times, Lou, especially you say like when people are, driving home at 5 o'clock.
Yes.
And that's when everybody's that extra, and all that shared energy in that. So I just want to take that moment before we jump into sort of the chatting about creativity, how it's important to honor that energetically as well as physically things are going on, but it's important to pay attention to it on a spiritual level as well.
Yes.
So that you still watch your energy, so you don't need to actively go into the fear patterns if it's not something you wish to learn.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. We went out yesterday also. Paul needed boots, and I had done that. I had done that little ritual of putting us in a bubble as we were going into the world, because like you said, right now we're in orange level, and it probably will go into red. Because this is our surge. We were discussing that the other around the world, the surge has been going on since the fall, and that second surge, and we're just getting into the second, the second surge.
I mean, in a way, it's kind of almost like our first as well, because we never had these high numbers before, where you're seeing 10, 15, 20, and I think that's an important thing too, because this is now when a lot of people, and I noticed too, because I always love to read the comments on, social media platforms and that, because, and there's a lot of people that are expressing a lot, excuse me, not just fear, but a lot of anger around this. Feeling like they're either, they're stuck and they don't know what to do, or, and Lou and I have mentioned this in a couple of podcasts where, you can have something happen, but it doesn't have to be your defining moment. You can actually take it as the opportunity to go, oh, okay, my job separated, from my energy. So the universe is trying to find me something better. But a lot of people are going into the fear belief of lack. So again, and we definitely did see that the first time around for us, even though we didn't have the big numbers where all the toilet paper was gone and the stores were getting ransacked. We definitely did see that fear, consciousness coming into it. But I think it's really important because, like I said, for me, it wasn't so much the fear at the superstore yesterday, but it was more the disruption in the energy. Because, like I said, I normally don't drop stuff. Like, I'm very sort of like, I dropped my yogurt, burst on the floor. There was all this. And it was very interesting because for me, again, it's when you see a lot of the people are not grounded. And, when we've discussed this before, you and I, Lou, when, we drive places and that, how sometimes you get to the point where you're going on automatic, and you're not consciously there. And I noticed yesterday, a lot of people were not consciously shopping. They were there, because they have to be there, or they were there to get that. And I think that's another great example or a great opportunity to take to explain to people, especially in times like this, where there's so much up and down with so many other people, it's really important, if you can, to try come back to yourself. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the number, but Lou and I did do a whole podcast, if you go back and have a look, on smudging and cleansing your energies. And so it is important during times like this to make sure that you are monitoring your energies, because it's so much more overwhelming than it normally is if you're extremely sensitive or you're one of those, empathic people. So just a heads up, for people that, like I said, from where I noticed it yesterday, that, I just want to take that little moment to go, hey, conscious reminder, like just try to stick that in your head if you can, and then sort of we'll shift on into the creativity side of things.
For just quickly before we do that, for me, the key is if I realize that I'm not breathing, that's my cue. Like, take a deep breath, a couple of deep breaths, and it centers me, it grounds me. I know when I'm ungrounded, when I realize I'm not breathing. I'm not physically and consciously breathing. So that's a little trick for me. It's the breathing part.
I know, because I'll drop stuff like I did, or I tend to hit stuff. So I'll like bang my feet, I'll hit my hands, like something like that. That's how I tell that I'm ungrounded. So again, everybody's got different things, but perfect example of what Lou's saying there. If you have that moment hit, you go, oh, okay, step back from it, breathe into it, send that intention, and then release it so you can reground and recenter and sort of like affirm that you do not need to participate in that type of energy.
Exactly. Okay, so
we'll go into creativity, but we'll segue with this. I'm just thinking, because I think it's important to understand that when you use your energy in an effective manner that's beneficial, you can actually channel it into many different things. So you are able to channel it into fear-based patterns, fear-based lessons, fear-based things. You're able to pattern it into positive, happy, whatever. That choice is yours. But in the case of what we're going to discuss today is like sacred art or creativity. And in this sense, you can also channel that energy into creative processes or creative projects, that you're able to go through. Because for those of you that are just new to the page, or if you already know Lou and I, both her and I are actually artists. So we both, Lou does multiple things. Yes. Oh, there you go. There's one of her beautiful, beautiful paintings. You'll notice with a lot of Lou's work, if you see it, that it is you have a lot of symbolism in your work, Lou. You can see your shamanic practice definitely is an influence in the work that you do.
Yeah, I have others on the wall, but I can't get to them. But creativity for me is, it's another form of journeying for me. When I get into painting or felting or spinning wool on my wheel, or I get into that theta state and that trance state, that the body just automatically does, whatever needs to be done. Because a lot of the time when I'm working on a piece and I finish it, I know that for me, the key is when I start crying, when I get emotional, I know that spirit was very much involved. My compassionate allies were very much in the process with me, because I went into that trance state, that shamanic state of creating.
And I think that's important too, because some people will often think that your trance state is like a very deep, like you're in it and then suddenly you have this piece. It's not necessarily the case. There's varying levels of sort of trance or, that sort of conscious connection. And in Lou's case, what she's meaning is, and I know what she's talking about when you're creating a piece, and other artists may know, musicians, writers, whatever it happens to be, that you'll step back from the piece that you've been working on, and then it's almost that's the moment you consciously see what you created and you go, oh wow, that's what that is.
Yeah.
And that's that sort of thing where your soul is working a little bit in, a little bit out, a little bit connected, a little bit not, and there is sort of that weird, I guess you'll say, like almost like a transient space where you're not quite up on their energy, fully in it like you would in a vision quest, but you're not quite back on Earth. And that I think is important to explain to people, because there's a lot of people, and I mean, Lou has, you've done a lot of different styles of art over the last few years, because I know you've done a lot. You've done your wool felting, you did and beautiful wool pieces, and I think you've got your page on Facebook still, don't you, with your art?
Yes, Red Lang Lou Originals. You'll see some of my work. Yeah,
because if you want to go on there, there's some beautiful pieces. But I think what it is, I'm trying to say to people, there's a lot of people who don't believe that if you are artistic, that you are able to be creative.
Right.
And I think there's that back and forth where there's a bit of a disconnect. And what we're talking about is not necessarily artistic skill. We're talking about using your energy in a creative way in the act of creation.
Yes. Yeah, cooking is creating.
Yeah.
Like I know a lot of people that are amazing cooks, amazing chefs, amazing pastry, and I could never, I mean, I've attempted many things, but that's not one of my strong suits. I love to cook and I love to experiment, but there are people that are extremely creative when it comes to that. So when I hear somebody say, well, I can't even draw a straight line, I said, it's not about drawing a straight line. I said, it's about your creative part. We are all creative. We're born to create. Just to be quiet and still and allow what your soul, like you were talking about the soul, what your soul has to offer.
Not in its way, I actually believe, and I know other people might not, depending on where you are in your creativity space or your artistic space. I genuinely believe, like Lou, that everybody is creative, but also that everybody is artistic. It's just you may not have found the avenue yet that is your creation. And you may get somebody that can't paint, but they are incredible at crocheting, and they'll make the most beautiful blankets, or perhaps you don't know how to make a song, but you make the most amazing quilts.
Yes.
There's so much that's out there that I tell people, it's all about using that energy in a way to manifest, something new in the world, create something new in the world in its own way. Gardening, creativity, you know what I mean? Like interior decorating, creativity. There's so many things. And I think it's important for people to realize that it's not a competition of how good can I get. It's how does this creativity make me feel?
Yes. Well, for me, and why are we so hard on ourselves when we do create, and then we sort of walk away from a piece and things, and we don't even look at it or see, we deviate our attention to other things. We have a difficult time to go back into a certain piece or to even start it, to even, like, I had not painted for quite a while. I mean, I love to paint, and I did a couple of commissions last year, but this one that I'm working on is 4 feet by 5 feet.
Oh yeah, the big one, yeah.
Which I have never done in my life. P has done beautiful big pieces, big canvases, and I always found it daunting, but your pieces are just mesmerizing. And I thought, what am I gonna do with this big piece of canvas? Like, and I would talk to it. I would say, okay, what are you going to become? Or what are you going to be? And all of a sudden one day I just got my tape, my masking tape, and I started taping. And I'm like, I don't know where this is going, and then, like, to tell you the truth, I'm almost done. Like,
fantastic.
I've got maybe a couple more hours to just fine tune, the spots and stuff.
And I mean, I think that's really important to, forgive me, my voice is off today. I apologize. Sorry, coughing right into the microphone. I thought I was coughing away. I'm sorry, everybody. I ate a cookie that didn't quite go down earlier. Uh, but no, with the thing with the taping, um, Lou didn't know what it was going to be, but she trusted the process. You know,
Yeah,
and I think that's the thing for people to understand is you can put the tape on and go, well, I don't know what that is. And remember, you can always take the tape back off. You know,
exactly.
you don't have to keep it on there. And you know, we have this thing in our culture where it's very much it's odd because we're a waste-based culture who doesn't like to waste, as odd as it is, because we'll throw other stuff away easily, but when we get that really nice notebook, oh, I can't waste this notebook. I can't, you know, I can't mess up this beautiful notebook, you know, or we get these canvases and we go, wow, I have to know exactly the amazing picture that's going to go on there. I can't paint on there, you know. And I think it's important for people to remember that you can always repaint a canvas to go and buy another one,
Mm,
you know. And then people bring in and a lot of stuff comes up because they go, well, I paid for the canvas and then this, and we go, yes, so but then work on the belief system as well that the universe is abundant and they want you to have more canvases,
right.
you know. Now for
Yes.
me, I found like Lou's very different to me in the context that you do not mind selling your paintings. That is always something you and I have discussed. Louise is always, for me, I get actually very attached to my artwork, which is why I never went into being a commercial artist. Because if I sell a piece, I honestly, the next year I'm like, can I have it back? I want my painting back, kind of thing like that. Because for me, my paintings are almost like I call them my diary entries. You know, they're my special sort of things, and I love my paintings. You know,
Mm,
but for me too, I, you know, instead of criticizing that, and I'm not gonna lie, I did for a very long time, like, hey, you should let your art go, da 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 da, you know. And then I found writing, and writing is my absolute passion in life. Writing is the thing that brings my heart so much joy. And writing sort of clicked for me in the sense that I go, oh, you can have a copy of my book, you can have a copy of my story, but I'm not giving you my story. So there was just something with that disconnect. Because I remember for you, and I always said this was something I found interesting with Lou, where I would always say to you, but how do you just sell a painting and not have a attachment? And your mentality was always like, but I want it out in the world.
yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, there are some paintings that I have kept, you
Hmm.
know, like my first acrylic painting, I've
Yeah.
kept that one. My first oil painting, I've kept that one. You know, and the big one that I'm doing right now is for my home,
Hmm.
for one of the big walls that, you know, we got the house repainted there. And anyway, so that's gonna go there. And it's funny because, you know, my husband is a big supporter of whatever I do, whatever I create, whatever I think of that I want to get started. He's been extremely supportive all through these years. And when he saw the big canvas, he was like, "Oh my," he says, "You've never done a big one like that before." So
Hmm.
he's been coming downstairs in my studio and checking once in a while,
Yeah.
and he's not commenting too much because it's really out of my box. Like I've gone
Because it's
outside
very
my
abstract
box.
compared to what you do too. Like it's a
Yes.
very sort of, from the little bit I've seen of it, it actually is very different. And
Yeah.
I think that's important. And you know, another thing with creativity is we often get stuck in the rigid thing that because we paint one way or create one way or make one way, that that's what we're meant to keep doing. And going into a different genre like abstract or, you know, maybe it's more classical or whatever it happens to be, you know, that you go, oh, I can't do that. That's not what I do. You know, I paint trees or I paint this. And, you know, it's that rigid thing. And you know, really, and however it is that you do it, like we said with cooking, maybe you try a different recipe you've never tried, or gardening, you plant something that you've never planted. It's important because you have to remember your spirit is always evolving and your creativity that is there as a way to express where your spirit is presently in that moment,
Mm,
you know.
yes.
And for Louise, without going into details, we've Lou and I, like I said, we've been friends for a very long time now, so we sort of know with it and everything. And there has been a lot of shifting for you over the last year, so I'm not surprised that your art style is shifting differently, you know. And for me with the big canvases, it was always, I want that energy out there. I'm like, I love it to be seen, kind of thing like that. But then I know mine's a fear thing, that I'm like, I'm safe in the house but not in the world. That's why I don't want my paintings in the world. So, you know, there's a lot for a lot of people that it brings up an emotional space that might challenge some people, and then that's why they'll do that thing where they shut down the piece. You know,
Yeah.
I don't want to paint anymore because if somebody does this, or, you know, kind of thing. And for me, I came to the peace with the fact that I was like, I love painting, but I would starve as a painter. It's just my reality check. I'm like, you can't sell a painting and then tell people next week, give it right back. It doesn't actually work that way, especially if you're planning on spending the money. But like I
Yeah.
said, for me, I found that like with me, poetry, it's like poetry is my jam. I love poetry, all these different things. But it could have been very limiting if I stayed stuck on painting. And for you as well, you swapped over to the felting, you do so much other stuff, and
Yes.
I think that's where we get a little bit rigid with our lives, that we define ourselves by who we were at one moment and don't stop and reassess who we are now.
Exactly. Exactly. And for me, I mean, I have so many other interests that, like you were just saying, painting is not the only thing,
Hmm.
that I'm doing and stuff. And I haven't sold a lot of my paintings. I've donated more than not. I've
Hmm.
donated
Hmm.
to, our local auction place with the
Yes.
Isaac's Way, and I
Yes,
give
but
a
you're
hundred.
being humble. All of those have sold, and the money's going to the kids.
They have sold it, and I give 100%. I give 100% of all the donation. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, because I really believe that, unfortunately, in our society right now, a lot of the arts sections in the schools have been taken away because there's not
Hmm.
enough
Hmm.
funding. So this organization with Isaac's Way is magnificent. One auction is to support the kids for painting or creativity.
Hmm.
Others is for drama. Others for dance. They've been doing it for years, so it's a great organization, and they've supported thousands of children in our community
Hmm.
to pursue their passion and their love of dance or art or
Hmm. And that's great. If you are actually an artist in the city, look into that. It's Isaac's Way Restaurant in downtown, and they have, art auctions and that. It is a great place to look. But, that sort of starts stepping me onto another side of things, where we, in an odd way, and Lou and I know this because we've discussed this sometimes, that, either with spirituality or with creativity or something, you tend to get into that world and you surround yourself with people from that world. So it's very odd to me, and I don't mean in a rude way or like disrespectful to somebody who doesn't do it, but when I meet somebody who doesn't necessarily have a spiritual practice themselves or isn't, artistic or expressing in some way, it almost kind of confuses my spirit, that I go, oh, you're not doing that. But then in the same regard, their spirit is going, oh, you do that. You don't do this. It's more practical. And in our society, especially in the West, we really are taught from a young age, success is your thing. Like, be successful, whatever it is. And a lot of people get into that, well, success equates security and the money and the thing. So therefore I have to go into a job that I don't like. Because over the years with readings, I've come across so many incredibly creative, talented people that go, I can't do that. I don't have time. Maybe when I retire, or,
right.
I can't do that right now. Maybe when the kids are grown, and I think it's very important to understand that we're not advocating today for you to be, you have to become a painter or photographer or whatever. If that's what you want, go right ahead. But it's really more about bringing some version of creativity back into the flow of your life. And maybe that means you don't paint as much, but maybe you go to galleries and appreciate art, or you
Yes.
collect art, or instead of creating music, maybe you start playing music, but consciously playing music where you're listening to the music.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
for a lot of people, how like when you're a teenager, the angsty years when you put your music on and you ignore the world and you have that one, in my case, the CD that you play over and over, kind of thing. Think honestly as an adult, how often you stop and just put on the music like that.
Mm, I
Because
know.
for people that was really a and Lou, you had your record player. You told me you had your little portable record player. That
Oh,
was your one,
yes. Oh,
like,
yeah.
which are totally retro again now. Those are like all back in.
I know. I don't know where my records went. Like when we were cleaning mom and dad's house, I'm like, where did my records go? Anyway, they're gone.
Mhm. No, somebody else is enjoying them.
Exactly. Exactly.
But I mean, but that thing is like, and even as a teenager, like, and I use teenager because I think that's where a lot of people have those moments where they're still attached to their spirit and their needs and their wants, and they're trying to figure it out before they put that expectation of what they're supposed to become on themselves.
Right.
You know, because when you're
Yes.
no longer a teenager, you're meant to be a grown up, you know, and for us, it's graduating high school and going to university or college, or, you know, that's your defining moment, you know. And some people, I'll talk to them and I'll say, oh, but you're an adult, maybe you're in your 60s, 70s. And I go, oh, you still haven't figured out what you want to be when you're a grown up.
Yes.
You know, and
Yes.
I think that's a really like a thing to sort of bring back to people's minds, that you don't have to have everything sorted out, and you don't have to be the world's best artist or the world's best creator, you know, as long as you're doing something to counterbalance. And for, again, like I mentioned at the superstore, where it's so like, you know, everybody's ungrounded, it's always that very analytical, practical, sometimes just as a part of a practice to help bring you clarity or grounding or centering. You know, it is important to bring creativity back. And that's
Mm.
why, like what Lou does, a lot of the shamanic practices involve music.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of it. But it's funny. I thought that I would be putting music while I was creating, in my art studio,
Hmm.
but I'm not. I like the silence. I really
Hmm.
love the quietness and the silence. Where before, when I was a teenager and stuff, I would
Yeah.
have the music blaring and creating and cooking or doing whatever. My husband, he's always loved music, and that's never left him. And he has to have music when he's creating on his computer. He's a computer
Hmm.
consultant. So when he does the programming and stuff, he's got the music blaring in his office. I mean,
Hmm.
blaring like he was a teenager.
Hmm.
And then I have to come down and say, "Can you turn it down a little bit? Like
Yeah.
it's a little bit too loud."
The broom on the floor.
Or I stomp sometimes. I'll stomp on the floor like, "Come on." I'm like, what is it? What was it that show? Three's Company, Mr. Roker or something like that.
Oh,
Like,
Mr. Roper. Yeah, yeah.
coming over going, "Can you tone it down a little bit? We can
Yeah.
hear everything you're saying." But no, and yeah, creativity is anything that I find that, like you were talking about, being at the grocery store and people just being in that almost robotic mindset.
Yeah.
For me, creativity gets the brain moving, gets it
Hmm.
excited. I get excited about different projects, and I'll wake up in the middle of the night and going, "Oh, that's a great idea." And it's happened to you with your writing. You'll wake
Hmm.
up in the middle of the night and you have to write it down. You
Yeah.
can't, right? So you've got a good project going on. Can you talk about that project a little
I'm
bit?
working on a book, but I cannot give any details. No.
No.
Mm. So,
But it's exciting. It's
but
exciting.
you know what it is, because for me, you know, I kind of I ended up in art school sort of in an odd way. I say by accident, but a universal accident, I guess, because I had never really done art. You know, before that, I didn't take art in high school, nothing like that. I genuinely was one of those people, I can't draw a straight line, you know. And my parents, when I went to university for a year and really did not like it, like it did not suit me, it was not for me 100%. So, you know, and I remember saying to my mom, I was like, I can't do this. And she goes, you don't have to do that, but you need to find something, you know, either go to school or, you know, get a job. Like it was something that, and again, it's that don't just sit and, you know, sit in that moment, like find
Yes.
something. And one of my friends had been going to the craft college here in town, so the art school here in town, you know, and I was like, well, that sounds interesting. And they still have it, I believe. It was a First Nations program, where the whole first year that I chose to do was the First Nations program, where you would learn about, you know, Native American culture, spirituality, you know, traditions, practices. So that for me, and I was already so interested in spiritual practices, I was like, oh, perfect segue, you know. And then in the oddest way, I went from that and stayed at the school and did fashion design, you know. And then from fashion design, I went to pottery, you know. And so these were things that I never ever anticipated that I'll do, you know. And I graduated with both. I ended up staying at the school for 5 years, and I would have stayed longer, but the universe sort of arranged that they're like, no, no, boo, like time to step out now, like time to, you know, go into the world. But it was
Yeah.
one of those things that I found a creativity I never realized I had. And then when I went back to painting, the paintings were completely different, you know. But one of my big things, and this is what Lou and I have spoken about, and again, this is an energetic thing, where I always say one of the best and worst things I ever did for my art was to go to art school. And that's because other people started giving me their opinions on my art when I did. You know, and I
Yes.
think that's very important, because a lot of people, when you do something and you get excited, and that you know, and it's not like I'm trying to be cryptic with the book. It's not that. It's like I'm working on it, and I have it in this place where I'm like, no, I'm going to keep it, It needs to be what it needs to be, but it's something I'm working on, so I'm very happy with it. But I think for a lot of people, we do this thing where we'll tell other people who might not necessarily see what we're coming from, and I don't mind sharing with Lou because, again, that creative thing. So you're like, oh, cool, you're doing this, awesome. But I think it's a lot of people do that with partners or something. And again, even energy work can be considered creative. If you're doing healing work, like energy work, Reiki, sound therapy, anything, and the people get so excited and they tell the partner or they tell the children or they tell somebody and that person crushes it down. And because you haven't like embraced it enough yet, you sort of put it to the side and you go, oh, who am I kidding? And I know for me, and it was very important because I always say everything happened for a reason, because I know I did that with my art. When I graduated, I took it to galleries and and I did not get the response that I thought I was going to get. And for a very long time, that crushed my self-worth. Like I just totally cut creativity and art out. I was like, done kind of thing like that. But I mean, and in that sense, I was working other jobs. That's when I went to massage therapy school. So I was focusing more on that. So, there was a lot of stuff in there, but looking back now, it was invaluable, even though at the time it felt soul destroying, because when I come to my writing now, I've sort of worked through it in the sense that I understand if you give me your opinion, it's literally just that, your opinion.
Exactly.
And, and so I said, oh, it's important. The universe knew that writing is where I was going to focus my energy in this lifetime. So, so I was able to use the painting as sort of like the stepping stone of like, oh, careful you don't do that with the writing and let it crush your spirit in that sense. So I know everything happens for a reason, but, people need to see too, sometimes when you get excited, it's not a bad thing to cradle that little dream and just keep it for yourself. Just for a little bit. And especially with things like social media nowadays, everybody's like, blah, here's my life.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's something to be a little bit aware of, that sometimes we go, well, when you put it out on that big scale, if you're not ready yet, remember, people are going to give you their opinions back.
Yeah. And that I usually don't read any comments from my pages. It's rare, unless they contact me directly and tell me how they feel. I won't see it. I don't purposely look for that. And
but what I mean more is like you tell your parents and then they go, but how are you going to make money as art?
Yes.
How will you make money as an artist? You got to be practical. You have bills to pay.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And a lot of people will then go, oh, you're right. And again, there's nothing wrong with going back to old belief systems if you want to. But it's one of those that's what I'm saying is I'm like, sometimes if somebody themselves isn't working in that creativity or spirituality space or whatever it is, just be a little bit aware they don't have to, but maybe they don't need to know everything about what you're doing right off the bat until you're trusting your energy.
Yeah. I remember when I did my Reiki levels, my mom was really, really concerned because she had heard stories from, other communities in the surrounding areas where she was, and she thought, well, this sounds like a cult. Yeah. So I was very passionate about it. It had helped me immensely through my depression. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to sit down with her, show her the documents and the manual, the manual and of what I've done. And she did. She took it aside, she read through it, and I explained to her how my practice works, and it appeased her. She went, oh, okay. I said, Mom, you have to realize that like anything else, a job or a profession or whatever, people are going to take it and present it differently for whatever reason, whatever's happening in their lives. There are people that literally rely on every single word from a document, that's been out there for 100 years and everything like that. For me, I was looking outside the parameters, outside the box of how this could fit in my life, and I remember my teachers, all my teachers in shamanism and Reiki, it's important to have integrity when you're doing this work. And it's important when you do this work that you're not hurting somebody else physically, mentally, spiritually. So that always stayed with me, that my practice was mine first and foremost. Yeah. And when I was ready to offer it, it's just like my creativity. When it's ready to see the world and stuff, I'm the one that's going to offer it to the world, Yeah. It's not somebody else that's going to push me or tell me or, we have a brain, and we have we've learned the right and the wrongs and everything, and it's to work it out. You know,
Yes.
what fits for you.
But I
I'm
mean,
losing
you
my
also
words here.
gave yourself permission, though, to say, I'm not putting out the Reiki till I'm ready to put out the Reiki. You know, I'm
Yes.
not putting up the picture. And that's what I'm saying, because a lot of people get very excited. And it's like, here's my painting, you know, part of the way through. And it's not that they're sharing it in the sense they're trying to get approval from it. You know,
Yes.
and then the problem is when they don't get that feedback. And I know, because I've done that before, and that, you know, that to me was one of those things where, like, again, I say, you know, and when I'm cemented into something and I love it, I go, here it is, world, you know. But for me, where it was a lot when I was, you know, first starting with my art and everything, there was this thing of like, look, everybody, I painted, it's good, right? You think I'm good, right? Like, you know, getting that validation. And when I never got that, or it never came in the way I perceived it, you know, it completely crushed me. But at the time of making it, the creativity made me so peaceful. You
Yes.
know, and that's when it was something that really dawned on me, that I'm like, not everything needs to be shared with every other single person on the planet. You know, and that's why a lot of my personal spiritual practice, it's not often that I'll go online and actually show people rituals or ceremonies or things like that, you know, because for my practice, I go, it works for me. If there's something I can tell you, great. But a lot of my stuff, I go, it's my personal thing, you know,
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah.
you and I, same thing. Like, we both have very symbolic tattoos, that it's like, you can see my tattoo, but I don't necessarily need to tell you what
No.
my tattoo symbolizes or why I got what I got.
Exactly.
You know, and that's what I'm sort of saying with this whole thing with the creativity. You can be creative in your own way that works, but if it's something that's still this fragile, gentle, beautiful little thing, because you're changing out of a different mindset, just be a little careful with yourself and a little gentle with yourself, that, you know, you don't have to run before you walk. It's not necessary. And what we're saying is more that creativity, as Lou mentioned, once you start, it kind of snowballs.
Yeah. Yeah. If you allow it, you know,
Hmm.
again, it's trying to loosen the grip of control,
Yes.
right? It's trying to loosen that and to not have any attachments to anyone's expectations but your own.
Hmm.
You know, like when I feel full, when I see a painting and it makes me weep, it makes me ecstatic to the point that I'm in tears. I'm like, wow, I
Hmm.
did this. I
Yep.
did this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's so rewarding, you know.
Hmm.
And for me, that's what I feel is important for people to understand is the reward is yours. It's not
Hmm.
everybody else around you, but it's yours.
Yes, and you know, and that really is the thing. Because again, going back to what we've discussed in other podcasts, you cater your spiritual practice to you, not you to your spirituality. You know,
Yes.
you make it fit in your life. So again, what we're saying is, if all you can do is put on some nice quiet music, or nice music, or whatever
Yeah.
inspires you on your way to work, great, awesome way to bring your creativity in. You know, if most everybody's got cell phones now that have cameras. You know, maybe that means
Yes.
go out at lunch and take a couple of photos. You know, they don't have to be like gonna hang in a gallery, but it's really to get you sometimes out of the conscious mindset, especially if you are working something like an office-based job, or, you know, something where it's very repetitive, or, you know, your soul's in that thing. Because I think, like with spirituality, and, you know, I tell people this when it comes to talking with dead people, it's a lot easier to do than most people think it is. We just convince ourselves it's so hard. You know,
Right.
the dead are sending us signs and messages all the time. We just miss them because we're expecting this grandiose, you know, burning bush, as it were, you know, the biblical burning bush to get our attention. And the same thing with people is they think that this creativity is meant to, like, oh, my soul is opened up now, you know, and we go, it's sometimes it can be very subtle to start. You know, like
And,
for me, I
yeah.
have written since high school. Like I said, writing is my thing, you know, but I went through a patch where I was convinced by other people that my writing was not good enough and I wasn't ever going to be good enough. You know, but in an odd way, and I was fine with that in an odd way, because again, I did go away from my writing, but it always was kind of there in the background. You know, it was always sort of hanging out there, and then suddenly it came back, you know, years later, you know, when I was working with Shandala, when all the writing started coming back, and then suddenly I was like, oh, I like writing still, you know, and
Mm.
then I could bring it back in, and I'm fortunate that I have the type of life where I can fit writing into my day, you know. But again, what we're trying to tell people today is You know, Lou is not beating herself up every day that she's not painting. It's when she's inspired, she paints,
Yeah.
you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's what is really important. Your creativity or your link to the universe of creation should not be something that is causing you pain or suffering. You know, and you often see that with this, you know, the suffering artist, the
Yes.
starving artist. You know, you got to be tragic for your art. You have to sacrifice for your art. I've never, for me, understood that concept for myself, and that just doesn't work with my belief system. That I should have to suffer or struggle in order to have joy.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I agree 100%. 100%. Well, this morning I was outside in my pajamas. No, I had boots when I came out when Paul went out with Napoleon for his morning ritual, and the sun was just coming out. So of course my phone's in my hand,
Yeah.
and I'm just, as you know, I put a lot of my sunrises on
Yeah,
my Facebook
yeah.
page, and so and then we have a big piece of icicle in the back that's almost
nice.
touching the ground. Like it just, you know, as it warms up, it's been getting longer and longer, and
Yeah,
it hasn't
yeah.
broken off. And I thought, okay, it's going to get warmer today, so I need to go out. So I'm there barefoot in the back
Yeah.
deck, taking pictures of this big giant piece of icicle, and
Yeah.
it just made my brain go. I'm like, oh, look at the colors in there. Like there's blues and purples, and how the light refracts. Is that the right
Well,
word?
if you actually go back and watch the intro to our podcast, I think there must be maybe, oh gosh, 4 or 5 of the photographs in there are actually your pictures. There's a beautiful sunrise one, or I think it's a sunset maybe.
That's the sunset.
From Keswick Ridge, and that one is one of your photos right in there.
Yeah, and the flame one is one of mine.
Yes, the one that we actually have the Pilu on the podcast
and then
sort of image.
The one of me with Napoleon when he was a puppy.
Napoleon, and you took the one of me. I think a lot of my nice photos were the ones you took. The one I'm sitting on the tree, you did that one for me. Like,
yes.
So I mean, and so that's what we're trying to say. This is not one of these that Lou's waking up going, I have to be a photographer, but she's using photography when she feels like using photography.
I just love it.
And, well, I think it comes down to purpose, you know, because people are like, I'm supposed to have a purpose. Therefore, if I'm finding something, this is what I'm meant to do. When in reality, you don't have to be a photographer. You can just use photography, you know, because one of the things that I always bumped heads with some of the other people in the arts community, there was this thing that you're not really a writer if you're not writing every single day. You know, and you're not really an artist if you're not creating every single day, or you're not a healer if you're not healing every single day. And I really think that's limiting in the sense that I go, some days your spirit is just tired. You know, and I gave myself permission. I said, look, if by your classification it means I'm not a writer because I'm not writing every day, then I'm fine with that.
Yeah, well, that's their perception.
Their thing, but that's why I think I want to really sort of get that to people today before we start wrapping up here is, you know, because people think they're meant to do something and then they're supposed to like devote to everything, you know, and they go, well, I can't do photography, I can't afford the expensive camera, or, you know, and like we said, it doesn't have to be the world's most expensive camera. You can do it on your phone, for heaven's sake. Like, you know, you don't have to, like, you know, buy the world's fanciest computer. You know, I write a lot of my poetry right on my phone. Because it's the thing I always have on me. I've always got my phone in my pocket, you know, so when a poem hits, I get that little note dictation, and, you know, I sort of either speak the poem or, you know, I write out the poem depending on where I am. But for me, there's always that thing of, how do I word this without sounding like I'm trying to, like, you know, that finger wag at people? There's always the potential to create, but you also have to be brave and allow yourself to create.
Yes.
You know, because there is a really inherent vulnerability that a lot of people don't like when it comes to the arts, you know, and when you're writing, you're making yourself vulnerable. When you're painting, you're making yourself vulnerable when you're creating, because there is that moment where somebody might reject it.
Right.
You know, and that comes down to the whole thing. But again, you have to ask yourself, well, if I'm living my life in a rigid way and I'm working a job that I have to do because I'm worried people are going to reject me if I don't. And then if I create and I'm worried about people rejecting, you're worrying about rejection all the time. And we go, but in that sense, you're worrying about the same thing, but you're still not having fun. So if you're worrying about people are going to reject you and they're going to reject you from that mindset regardless, we go, well, why not enjoy yourself in the meantime anyway?
Yeah, it is about having fun. It
It is.
is.
And I think that's what a lot of people forget, because we're supposed to be practical, logical. And at our core, spirits are not these rigid, like kind of things. Spirits are genuinely like, I love life, I love create, it's
Oh
just
my
when we become
gosh.
human and we get stuck in that rhythm and that belief that life is hard, that we start giving up on it. Or again, we're told by parents. And I was very fortunate because my dad, he actually works in a machine shop, but he's an incredibly talented artist. That's sort of where the creativity comes from. But my mother as well, like she works with spirituality, works with all that different stuff. Mom had things, where she would, like, the knitting and all that stuff. So, there is sort of that creativity thing. And the wonderful thing, and I was lucky in the sense that my parents never told me I couldn't do something. They always
Yes.
just said, do something that at least pays your bills.
Right.
Do something that at least, you're going to be happy with at the end of the day. Because my parents never had this thing that we have to be great, but that we have to be happy.
Yes.
And I think for me, that was really important, because looking back now, there's been many opportunities, where I've let people take that happiness from me. Because again, I was going out with that expectation of what is going to happen. I need the approval, and you and I have discussed this before, Lou, how social media can kind of be that bit of a pitfall if you do have a low self-worth, where you're like, how many likes, how many this, how many that.
Hmm.
And so that is something I must admit, I always still am consciously aware of, that I don't fall back into that approval, moment, or that approval space. And I think, it's a work in progress for everybody,
Yes, it
but what
is.
we're saying is creativity is not meant to harm you. It's meant to inspire you. So if you
Yes.
take anything from today's podcast, just look for a little bit of inspiration in your life, because sometimes a tiny baby little bit of inspiration is enough to get the ball rolling, to shift it and start manifesting new stuff or new opportunities to create, which in turn can change your entire life in a whole new path that you're not expecting.
I get inspired by other artists.
Hmm.
In my Instagram page, the Journeying with Louise Lang Farr,
Hmm.
that's the one, my all-encompassing spiritual art, everything.
Hmm.
I have a lot of artists in there. So that does felting, that does rug hooking, that does, paintings and things like that. And they inspire me. I
Hmm.
love following them because I get ideas on colors and I get
Yeah.
ideas on form, and I'm like, oh, how did they do that? And I've befriended most
Hmm.
of them. And so I'll send them little notes saying, how did you do that? Like, how did you get
Yeah.
that? And their artists are amazing like that. They'll
Yeah.
share. They'll
But that kind of goes with that old adage, misery loves company.
Right.
Everybody goes, oh, misery loves company. So does happiness.
Yes.
And so does creativity. And there's a lot of time creative people, for me with writing, like I said, and mine is the writing groups. I love writing groups, where it's like, you're not necessarily going, we're writing the same thing, but it's like, oh, you write as well. We're sharing this, and like one of
Mm.
the other ladies, a lovely other healer here in Fredericton, she's working on a book as well. And her and I, have started now that we're going to chat every couple of weeks, just as sort of like a check-in kind of thing. And that's what this is really about today, because we always tell people, our podcast is really about spirituality, but in its own way, creativity is a part of your spiritual practice. It's just maybe you have to find your avenue of creativity that works for you.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
if we always say, if you can live, like a creative life or an inspired life, then you've lived a good life.
Mm. Yes.
Because it'll be something that you look back on. And again, you might, like for photography, maybe you're not going to be an Annie Leibovitz, but maybe you'll look back, and one of the things I always tell people, and mine is an odd one. And like I said, because I deal with death, mine's always odd. I always say, I love keeping my books together. And I've always said to Mom, get rid of everything of mine when I die. When I pass, I said, get rid of everything. But I said, but keep my notebooks. I said,
Right.
that's the one thing I will ask you to keep. I said, keep my poems together, keep my writing together, because there's this thing for me, that I go, I would love for future generations of my family, when my nieces have children kind of thing, for one day, maybe they come back to that notebook, and they read something that's inspirational
Mm.
to them. So, for me, there's always been that thing of, what do you leave behind? And think about that. You're making a quilt. Maybe future generations in your family are going to keep that quilt.
Yeah.
You know, or when somebody passes, they get your paintings or your paintings, you know, and you don't know. When it's a weird thing, because we always laugh, you know, when we see paintings and that in thrift stores, and I go, yeah, but it ended up there, and maybe somebody's going to find that painting and buy it and inspire them, even though they never knew the person who died, that it was donated from their house. But you know, it may be their start to collecting art. You know, it might
Yes.
be the start to something great. And I think that is where it really, you know, can help people understand, is we go, when you create something, it doesn't have to be great, but it is a bit of a legacy that you're still leaving behind.
Yes, exactly.
You
Exactly.
know,
That's
so,
exciting.
but I think we should keep watching the time, Lou. I think we're running long today.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, we talked,
It is.
you're looking at the time. We talked a little bit before we started. So
Yes, that's true. That's true too. Because, but yes. So anyway, thank you everybody for tuning in. So we'll start doing a wrap up on this one, unless you have any other big thoughts you want to add in, Lou, before we say goodbye to the lovely people for the week.
no, I'm good. Just, just go out, and even, I have a lot of friends that go and walk in the woods, and they go snowshoeing
Mm,
and things like that, and they'll start collecting items that have fallen from the trees, or they found a rock, and then they make beautiful art pieces
mhm.
with that. So I mean, creativity is whatever for me, it's the brain gets working, and like, oh, that
Yeah,
would look good with this. That would look, you know what I mean? So yeah. So just be open. Just be
and I
open
mean,
and
even matching an outfit, putting a scarf with the hat with
yes,
the shirt, creativity. You're using some sort of, so you know, everybody's got creativity. You just might not realize it because you're mistaking your creativity for being an artist.
exactly.
You
Exactly.
know, and
We're all
that's what
we're
we're
all
expressing today.
creators. We're
Yes,
all
we're all
creators.
creators, and like I said, I believe everyone in their own way is an artist, but different versions or variations of the art. But that's really, you know, for today, it's like, remember, you have the power to create your reality, therefore you have creativity.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
there's a reason that's in the words, you know, like there's a reason create is part of creativity. You know, that there is this thing that it's very important to realize that you are in charge of your reality in your world, and you get to decide how you want to live it, rather than necessarily letting other people tell you how you should express or be.
Amen.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. We will end on that note, and we will see you again next week. And I mixed up something last week. I almost left out poor Louise's social media, but you jumped in and saved the day. But yes, so we are now on Spotify if you would like the audio only version. But you have to look up us up under P Lou. So PLOU, all one word. They don't have the dash in it for some reason,
Mhm.
but it's P Lou on Spotify. You can find us on Podbean. We're on YouTube again under Spiritual Medium Paleki. Our Instagram accounts, again, they'll all be posted below. So we won't have every video where I'm listing them all off, but they will all be posted below in the links here if you were interested. And please do like and share the video when you see it. And, you know, we'll try post it on Facebook as well. But some of them, if they're a little long, I can't upload them. They won't let me. But if you are interested, please do tune in again next week and all the others. And this is, again, episode 9. There's 8 others, if you're just finding us
Yes.
today, that we would love for you to go back and go through, because every week we're picking a different topic that we want to share. And again, we just want to thank all of you. Thank you again so much for tuning in with us and sharing the journey with us as we create PLU to help bring you the different teachings that we have explored over the years. So again,
Thank
my
you.
name is, yes, so again, I'm Spiritual Medium Paleki and Louise of Your Healing Journey with Louise Lang Farr, and we appreciate you being here. All right, take care, my friends. Have a great week.
Bye. Bye, P.
Bye, Lou. I love you.
Love you too.